All right, I'd like to call to order the meeting of Community Unit School District 300 Board of Education on Tuesday evening, June 13th, 2017. Mr. Fiorentino, please call the roll.
Ms. Garcia? Ms. Lopez?
Present.
Ms. McNicholas?
Present.
Ms. Miller?
Present.
Dr. Scarpino?
Present.
Mr. Stevens?
Present.
Mr. Fiorentino, present.
Let's see. Who wants to lead the pledge? How about that young man sitting next to you? Would he like to lead the pledge for us?
Yeah. Got a Cub shirt on.
He does not need to if he...
You could do it.
But,
That's
stand right
perfect.
there. We'll follow you.
Get pictures.
And now he's got to come up and shake hands.
Poor kid.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I always worry when I put somebody on the spot like that.
Note to self, never make eye contact.
Thank you.
Okay. The only change I have on the agenda is we're taking off item 15. There is no second closed session. I can try and make up topics if you want to come. I need a motion to approve the agenda. Second. Mr. Fiorentino? No, that was Scarpino.
Aye, yes.
Ms. Miller?
Aye.
Fiorentino, aye. Garcia?
Aye.
Lopez? McNicholas?
Aye.
Mr. Stevens?
Aye.
7-0.
Thank you. And before I turn it over to Mr. Hyde, I want to say parents, visitors, please feel free to roam around the room to take your pictures. As we recognize our students, just please don't block another person from taking pictures, but you can come anywhere. Mr. Hyde.
Madam President, members of the board, members of the community, students, and staff, thank you for being here this evening. Tonight, first on the student recognition, I'd like to introduce Ms. Rachel Richardson, who is here to talk with us this evening about Battle of the Books.
Come on over. How are you?
Don't be shy.
I like the shorts.
Hi, my name is Rachel Richardson. I'm the coordinator for Battle of the Books, and we're just here to congratulate the Battle of the Book Championship this year, which is Westfield School. Each student reads as a team 50 books and memorizes 50 authors. And they compete against 4 other schools, and then they have a championship where they also are asked questions based on 50 books and 50 authors that they have to name. So they work as a team to do this, and they did an excellent job as they are the champions this year for 2017. So we would like to congratulate how well they did. And this is their coach, Nicole Blomquist, who is going to introduce the winners.
Hey, thanks for having us here. I want to expand a little bit and say the Battle of the Books program extends to all 5 of our middle schools, and collectively, with all 5 of those middle schools, they read 1,500 books. So we've got a lot of reading going on. This currently extends to 6th grade only. This team in particular has reached out to me and expressed an interest in continuing this for 7th grade. And I told them I would do all that I could, and I've sent a few emails, and I told them I would speak on their behalf to try and extend this to another grade level. And if we did, that would be 3,000 books if we include our 6th grade and our 7th grade. This group in particular, they read 200 books during their 6th grade year, just this last year. And their dedication and reading and commitment to the team is what brought them to this championship. They worked well as a team and brought out one another's strengths. Vivian, raise your hand. Thank you. Vivian showed initiative by not only being the first to memorize all 50 titles and authors, but she also created online flashcards for the rest of the team to learn from. Christina, thank you. Christina got to share in the practicing and victory celebrating with her brother, Andrew. Where are you, Andrew? Raise your hand. With her brother, Andrew, who was on our team, and we won first place 2 years ago. Lauren began the year, as the shyest member of our team, and as a result has earned herself 4 really good friends here. Allison, there's Allison. Allison showed our team it was okay to multitask and still be a part of the teams, because at times she found herself committed to more than one task, getting homework done, being parts of other groups, and she still maintained focus on our team and brought us to the championship. And Yvonne offered to take home all of these lovely shirts that the ladies are wearing and bedazzle each of them with the team names on the front. So really good team sportsmanship. And I want to thank each of you girls for your enthusiasm and dedication to our team. And I really do feel lucky to have been a part of this team each year. And we would like to thank you, the school board, for honoring us and our team here today. Thank you. I was just trying to get them to go through this.
That's okay. No problem.
No, plus they're short. I don't know.
Favorite book? Which one? You have a favorite book? Good job. Okay, great.
Oh, I like that one.
Do you have a favorite book?
Too many? I love it. I love it.
You have a favorite?
You have a favorite?
Thank you.
Uglies. You got somebody else? Oh, thanks. I have to say that was a fantastic recognizing each kid. I actually was awesome. Everyone jumped in. Thank you. Thanks so much.
So if anyone has never been to a Battle of the Books tournament, you should go. Because whether your student is participating or not, it is nail-biting. And it is amazing to see what the kids know. And if you want to take it a step further, read the books yourself. So that when they are asked these little detailed questions, you send telepath notes, messages to the contestants as they're answering.
It appeared that Uglies was the
Yes, and
most common favorite book with everybody.
Which I'm embarrassed to say I didn't know and didn't read, and we'll do that this summer. But Mr. Hyde, there was a comment about trying to bring this to 7th grade. Is this a difficult process for you to look into to let us know if it's possible or not? It
So
might be a funding
Staff
issue.
are there waving and nodding, and we've already been texting. So please understand, I'm not surfing the internet when I'm going on my phone. So when I heard the question, immediately went out to staff. Ms. Vicente will work with Kristen Corvo and also with Amy McCrindle and Ann Pasco and Jason Emerickson. They'll contact schools, gauge interest across the district, because obviously it requires multiple teams. But it's not difficult for us to expand, and I'll bring it back to the board as far as what we find out and what next steps might be.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. At this time, I'd like to introduce Mr. Stephen Gertz, the athletic director from Dundee Crown High School.
Good evening, and thank you very much for having us tonight. I'm Steve Gertz. I'm the athletic director from Dundee Crown, and I am here to introduce our two outstanding coaches who are going to be talking about Anthony, and we're very excited about Anthony being recognized. He was also recognized in the fall, and he is one of our two-time state qualifiers and just an outstanding young man. So our head coach, Matt D'Angelo, and Coach Tyler Carlson are going to talk a little bit about him. So thanks again for having us.
So tonight we're here to honor Anthony Hergoy for what he accomplished in the track season. So Anthony qualified for state in the 3,200 meter run, which is 2 miles. He was one of 25 athletes in the state of Illinois to accomplish the feat. He took 19th overall. He also finished up number 2 all time on the DC record books in the 1,600 meter run and the 3,200 meter run, behind a national record holder. So we're real proud of what he accomplished this year. He also has served as a great leader on our leadership council, and is definitely a great example for all of our underclassmen. And he's going to continue that leadership next year. And we're really happy that we get him one more year. So
Can you repeat what you said about underneath the national record holder? What was that?
The guy who was in first in the 1,600 meter run, the 1,300 meter run on the DC record books, he was a national record holder. He holds the freshman mile record.
And he came in right behind that?
Yes.
Amazing.
Yep. So please join me in applauding Anthony Hergoy's accomplishment.
Congratulations. Glad we have you back one more year.
Congratulations. Thank you. Thank you.
It was a pleasure.
I was going to do that. Thank you.
Madam President, members of the board, at this time, I'd like to introduce Mr. David Hicks, Athletic Director for Hampshire High School.
Well, I feel I've had a bad date and I got stood up. As of 24 hours ago, at least half of my kids were coming. I had one solid maybe. But I do want to mention how well these boys did this year. The first one is Jake Ory. Jake will be attending Arkansas State. He was a cross-country champion for the Fox Valley in the fall. He's also holding the records at Hampshire for the 3 mile, the 2 mile, the 800, and the 400. He does not hold the 1 mile. If you look up at the names, that's Will Matusak, who couldn't be here. He's a 1 mile record holder.
Wow.
Other boys in that group who either were on the relay team or alternates that could not be here set a school record, and they were sectional champs at the 4x8. Sorry that they couldn't come tonight, but thank you for having us.
No, thank you, sir.
Can I just say, as a Hampshire parent, having gone to many board meetings and having kids not show up, the common excuse is it's so far, and they work other jobs so that they can't get here. So it's not that they don't want to be here.
And it's not that far.
Yes, it is.
It's far.
It's 14 miles.
It is far. I always get lost.
I know, on those rare occasions when we have to go out there, I make sure I don't complain.
Is that a recommendation for a referendum to build a new administrative center closer to Hampshire?
Oh, yeah, that'd be fun.
That's a recommendation that Gilbert's police don't clock their speed going.
Yeah. Madam President, moving on. At this time, I'd like to introduce Mr. Jeremy Bauer, Athletic Director for Jacobs High School.
Good evening. Tonight I'm here representing 3 sports that advanced to state competition this year, but I am presenting boys tennis as well, as Mr. Betts could not be here. He's taking his first vacation in a very long time. The Jacobs boys tennis program had another successful season this spring as we captured a 2nd straight Fox Valley Conference title and won our 5th consecutive IHSA sectional. Those accomplishments were due in large part to the efforts of the 4 state qualifiers in front of you. Kyle Burton, a sophomore, was a state qualifier in doubles last year and earned his first trip in singles this year, following a 3rd place finish at sectionals. Kerwin Chong, who qualified in doubles each of the past 2 seasons, also made his first trip in singles as a sectional runner-up. Senior Winston Yao earned his first appearance in the state finals by winning the sectionals double title with his partner Matt Kastridis, who started teaching tennis this week and could not be here. So these 4 state qualifiers and their teammates that they represent have been a great competitor on the court, students in the classroom, and members of our community. We're incredibly proud of their leadership and so fortunate to have them as ambassadors for our program and for the Jacobs High School. Please join me in thanking these young men of character that they've shown and the successes that they've had over the past few years. Thank you. And next up is Mr. Jason Bohart for boys track.
Thank you so much. They look so nice. Tidy. They have ties on them. They all have ties. This is nice too.
I'm Jason Bohart, the head track coach at Jacobs High School. In front of you are 4 of the 6 qualifiers we had this year for the state track meet. This year, our track team got 2nd in the county, the McHenry County meet, 2nd in the Fox Valley Conference meet, and then also 2nd at the IHSA sectional. At that sectional, we did qualify 4 individuals and 1 relay for the state meet. The individuals, they were all conference champions, and they all qualified in the long jump. That was Lauren Strickland. He's not here tonight. He's got a football commitment. He got 2nd all-time on the Jacobs record list. Our 300 hurdler, Jermaine Magdalene Ferguson, he's 3rd all-time on our list. Was also a conference champion. In front of you, Zach in the yellow shirt, Zach Albrick, is also 3rd all-time at Jacobs High School. Won the conference 1600, ran downstate as well. And then also 3rd on the all-time list at Jacobs High School is Aiden Ludlam in the black shirt. Raise your hand and wave. There you go. Who actually is also 3rd all-time on the Jacobs list. So we had a lot of good performances, and I'm really proud of what these guys were able to do. A mix of seniors and juniors, sophomore, and I look forward to bigger and better things next year as these guys, the guys that come back. And I want to wish these 2 seniors that are here good luck as they head off to college next year. Thank you.
Congratulations. Congratulations. I still have 2 next time. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Congrats. Thank you.
My name is Coach Zimmerman. I'm one of the assistant coaches for the Jacobs girls track and field team. I also coach the throws. I had the pleasure of coaching Kira Cabuso this year. Kira was our lone qualifier for the state of to qualify at sectionals for our team. Kind of go through what she accomplished this year. In indoor conference, she was a 4th place finisher. Outdoor conference in the shot put, she took 2nd place. The county, she took 4th place. And then at sectionals, she hit a PR and hit a state qualifying mark of over 38 feet. She threw 38 3.5 inches to qualify for state. The Naperville Gus Scott invite, she took 4th place. Riverside Brookfield, she took 2nd place. She was the only freshman to qualify for state in Class 3A. That's an incredible accomplishment. She was the #1 freshman in the state of Illinois in Class 3A, and the number 3 freshman in the entire state of Illinois.
Wow.
As a freshman, mind you. So
Wow.
this is, she's got a very, very bright future ahead of us. She was, at state, she took 21st out of 36 athletes. A lot of athletes will go down there and kind of be overwhelmed by the spotlight with how big that state competition is, and she flourished. She threw 38 6.5 inches, which is 4.5 inches of tying the school record, which was set in 1982. And she's only 5.5 inches away from breaking it, which I have no doubt in my mind. Next year, she will be breaking that school record. So she took 21st out of 36 athletes. She just missed qualifying in the top 12, which as a goal of ours next year, is to qualify into the finals next year. So she was also named team MVP, again, as a freshman, which is a really great, unbelievable accomplishment. Kira, congratulations on everything you did this year. We are very, very proud of you, and we hope to get more girls to qualify next year. Congratulations.
Great job.
All right, we expect to see you back next year. Okay, with that extra 5 inches. Congratulations, Coach.
Madam President, members of the board, moving on, at this time I'd like to bring to the podium Mr. Mike Jacoby, Mr. David Hill, and Susan Harkin. They're here to announce that the state of Illinois has successfully passed a balanced budget, has decided to fully fund public education. Oh, I misread my notes. I do apologize. They are here tonight to present us with the IASBO Past President's Scholarship.
Well, in fact, we did, for the first time in 20 years, actually get a bill through both the House and the Senate. So we are on our way.
We are on our way.
Thank you, Fred. It is our pleasure to be here tonight. Thank you for giving us just a few minutes. What we do when somebody finishes their work on our board of directors for the Illinois Association of School Business Officials is come to their board meeting and, first of all, thank the district for giving them to us for some time. Susan served 7 years with us and finished as our past president. Our foundation, which is completely financed through individual contributions, actually gives a gift back to the school district in the name of our outgoing president. And so we're here tonight to make that presentation.
Again, I want to echo what Dr. Jacoby said. As the current president-elect of the organization, getting ready to step in as president and follow in the footsteps of the great Susan Harkin. She has given a tremendous amount to this association, and we truly thank you for allowing us the privilege of working with her. She has helped shape our organization. I believe that IASBO has been at the forefront of the funding solution, and we're headed in that direction, and it's in large part the organization, the leadership, and what Susan has done. So what I have today is a check for $2,500 to the District 300 Foundation in Susan Harkin's name. And again, I want to thank you so very much for giving us Susan for as long as you did.
Yes.
Yeah. Thanks for all your hard work. Hope to see you next year. Good luck to you, Yanni. Thank you. Thank you. Take that. That's yours.
Now I feel bad. I'm not wearing my pin. All right, thank you.
You're a weenie.
We all have our pins on. Yeah.
After graduation.
That concludes student and staff recognition.
Moving on.
Well, let's get prepared.
While we're waiting, can I just say thank you to Anthony again and his team for the videos that were posted on Facebook of the graduations. Having a graduate, it was really special to be able to see that. So thank you so much, and it's beautiful work, really is.
Thank you.
Mr. Chester, we have a question. If you can step forward, please. You want to come up to the podium for a moment?
Check your weapon in the back.
So, Mr. Chester, as you know, periodically with aging, we forget things and we get dates mixed up. So where we thought we had until our next board meeting to do a recognition, it's actually going to happen.
Wait until next week.
No.
We just
It's,
kind of bypass it as
we
well.
actually have something for you
Really?
tonight.
Is it that long or what?
This is your life.
Just don't let him escape.
Mr. Rowland, can we demonstrates on a consistent basis that I like the most, or I respect the most, is his level of professionalism. Gary is constantly operating at a very high level. He's very respectful of not only his role, but the roles of those he supports. Quite honestly, his professionalism also extends into his deep knowledge of what he does. I think we've been truly blessed to have someone who has the background that he has in military, fire rescue, and in law enforcement. And all of those have significantly contributed to our overall district's improvements and success. I dare say that there isn't an individual in this district that doesn't hear Mr. Chester's name and that I don't see light up. And that's not always the case when you start talking about a district safety officer, because by and large, when that person's involved, it's a situation that most people don't want to find themselves in. And yet, over the years, he's been able to establish a very positive respect and rapport with all of his colleagues. They truly view him as part of the team. They're very open and candid with him. And there's just a general sense of ease that he brings about to our district. You know, and his professionalism also extends to the numerous initiatives that he's brought to our district. Everything from as simple as implementing a new paper-based planning methodology for our evacuations and reunification process, to the tabletop exercises, but most recently the things that he's brought to our district that I think are quite impressive are also the lockdown blue light signals in all of our facilities, the training that was required for that, and now the new Raptor system. You know, I think Mr. Chester very easily could have been one of those people who could rest on his laurels knowing that he was going to retire and kind of go out just, you know, glad-handing and smiling, but that's not him. And that's also one of the characteristics about Gary I appreciate the most, is that he constantly works and strives to improve. He has a true and sincere commitment to our safety, that of our staff, students, and community, and it shows in everything that he does. Gary, I've had a pleasure of working with you now for 3 years, and I just very sincerely, from the bottom of my heart, I think, you know, over the last 3 years, we've had an opportunity to develop a relationship as both friends and colleagues, and there's never been a moment that I've ever second-guessed or questioned, you know, where we were and how well we would be able to respond to an emergency. But knowing that you put all those things in place, I truly hope that you get the opportunity to take some time to step away from all of this and to spend time with your family and your loved ones and reconnect. You've truly committed yourself here for a great deal of time, and I just want to wish you the very best of luck.
I want to wish you the best of luck in retirement. One of my favorite stories about Gary Chester is just how blessed we've been able to have him in this role. I've been in the district for over 30 years, and we didn't have a security officer in charge of our school safety and security for all of our students and staff. And it's truly a blessing to know every night when I go to bed, we have somebody in Gary's role that does an outstanding job overseeing and making sure behind the scenes everything is being taken care of in a safe and secure manner. We've been very blessed to have you, Gary. We've got some very big shoes to fill, and we wish you the best of luck in retirement. Thanks.
So, Gary, I've had the opportunity to work with you for several years. At the beginning, I was able to be on your safety committee meeting, but I also was able to join your bully prevention committee, and I really learned quite a bit from you. I was very impressed with how organized you were and how much you took into account the safety of our students. You had parents involved on those committees, and it just really, you've made a lot of changes for our district. So I want to thank you, and I want to say good luck. and you are well deserving of a much needed retirement with lots of rest, and I hope you have a wonderful time, and we will miss you truly. Thank you.
Hey, Gare. Sorry to see you leaving. You know, you've been my confidant, my friend, my neighbor for 9 years now. I don't know why we're friends. We got nothing in common. You know, I like dogs. You like cats. I'm classic rock. You're show tunes. I don't know. We share the same birth year. Kind of, sort of. Is that it? I don't know. I know you're cheaper than anybody I've ever known. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. You've been a great guy. You know, you supported me, you know, when I found out that I'm not Italian, I'm Jewish. You didn't have issues. Well, I kind of, sort of. You didn't make a big deal about it, I guess. Do you support me? Kind of. I don't know. I guess my favorite Gary story, if I had to tell one, you know, we're outside all day, checking out buses and cars and crazy stuff, and we come in and it's windy, and I say, Gare, is my hair messed up? And you kind of go, I don't know. So, you know, that, and so you're not really honest. You've not really been honest with me. I love you. Not sure why, but I do. I'm going to probably miss you for a little while anyway. I'd like to think that, you know, we'll stay in touch. My intentions are that we won't. You know it. I know it. I'm not going to come up and go for a ride in your boat and shoot guns or nothing like that. We're not going to do that kind of stuff. But, you know, I'm not even sure why you're still here. I kind of feel like once you say, I'm going, everybody expects you to be gone, and you know, like that's it. So go enjoy your life. I've loved you while you were here. I'll think fondly of you for a while in the future, and then that's it. Bye-bye.
Gary, my earliest memory of you is when I was a principal at Dundee Middle School, and you had been hired as our school safety officer, and I was so excited. And you came into one of our first principals meetings, and you looked so authoritative, and I had this immediate respect for you. And you did a presentation for the principals and then ended it with a video called The Truck Monkey. And that's when I got to know you, that you kind of had a sense of humor, and sometimes it wasn't even completely appropriate, but it was awesome. When I moved into the central office, I quickly realized that they had located your office directly across from the women's restroom. And so on a daily basis, I got to interact with you. And I'm not sure if that was so you could monitor all of us going in and out of the bathroom, but I thought, who gets so lucky to get to see the women in line every day for the bathroom? But in all seriousness, the most personal memory I have is when my husband and I adopted our son. And you knew that it had taken a lot of years for us to get there. And I can't remember how many times you stopped by my office and said to me, Cara, go home to the baby. You'll never get these years back. So Gary, I'm going to say the same thing to you. Congratulations. I'm glad you're going to get to spend the time with your family. That's well deserved.
Okay, so there's a couple of things that I think you guys should know about Gary. The first one being that Gary and I, we have a very, what I would say, special and different relationship, in the sense that when he and I arrive at a building together, we are often greeted with either the comments or the facial expression of, oh my goodness, the cop and the lawyer have walked into the building. So he and I have developed a system when we get somewhere and need to either address a relatively sensitive subject or a subject that people might not be the most welcoming to us addressing. And he has agreed to take on the role of good cop in most situations and allows me to take on the role of bad cop. So I really appreciate that, Gary. I'm going to have to convince Todd to do the same. What I think a lot of people may not know about or be surprised to hear is that Gary is a ladies' man, in the sense that whenever you take Gary somewhere or Gary goes on his own, you will later hear that someone is bound to fall in love with Gary and just think the world revolves around Gary, the moon and stars set with Gary. And, Gary often doesn't give himself enough credit, because he truly is loved and adored throughout this district by every member of the community.
Hi, Gary. It's me, Anthony.
Hi, Casey.
And we're here to, wish you well in your retirement. But there's something more important that Casey and I have for you. So I hope you're sitting down for this, because we have something really, really big. Gary, Casey and I would like to offer you an internship with the communications department.
I know. You're going to say yes. But wait for the whole pitch.
We know that for a man your age, there's no greater dream than to intern for 2 millennials. Casey, I have a lot of files. How are those files going to get organized?
Well, it'll either be Gary or the file gnome.
And I believe the file gnome is on vacation for the summer, so
He is traveling.
I think that's going to be Gary.
Yeah.
We like to drink a lot of coffee, and we need someone to take our coffee orders.
We like a lot of cream and sugar. The other thing, too, Anthony, is that we will make the intern do what all interns are forced to do these days, and that is run our social media channels. You will be using Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and if you can hack that, then we'll also have you doing web posting. So if you feel like you're up to it, we're interested.
First and foremost, though, you should know a few things about the internship. It does come with a uniform, and that is required.
There'll be a hat.
And there's a name tag. And Casey, what does the name tag say?
Intern.
So Gary, we know that your last day is June 30th, so we're gonna need you to report to the communications department first thing in the morning on July 1st.
That's Saturday.
That's not our problem.
Okay.
So Gary, we want you here at 4:45 a.m. July 1st.
With 2 hot cups of coffee that we will not be drinking because we don't work on Saturdays, but once they're cold, we expect you to pour them out. So you know how it is.
Right.
Intern stuff.
So yeah, again, we won't be here July 1st, but we want to see how committed you are to our internship. So we look forward to seeing you July 1. And Gary, in all seriousness, we do want to wish you a very happy retirement. You have been just a tremendous help to the communications department.
Yeah, thank you very much for everything, for being a professional and a friend, and you will be missed. Congratulations, and have a wonderful retirement.
Oh, that's nice. That was really unexpected.
Oh,
Yes,
but
it
it's not
was.
over.
And even to get Donna to say a couple of nice things. But
That was the edited part, wasn't it?
So at this time, I would invite board members if they have any comments, and if anyone who is visiting here, attending the meeting, would like to make any comments, please do so. Mr. Steve.
I would just like to say that I think Ann and I were the only board members that were here when you were brought on, and it was Dr. Arndt's idea that he presented to us, and we embraced it because we thought it was a great idea, and then you showed up. And the interesting thing is that everything that everybody has said about you, as far as how people feel secure, people fall in love with you, all these kinds of things, are absolutely accurate. You have changed this district dramatically. I think it's because of you. We have 4-inch steel in front of this dais here, so that if there's a wild guy in the audience, we're all safe. Literally, you took our concern about safety very seriously. You trained us even when we didn't want to be trained, and you made us aware. And I think that it's a tremendous loss for our school district. While we're happy that Mr. Rowing is on board, we're going to miss you tremendously. And I feel that we have grown as personal friends. I think that you make everybody feel that way. And I have your private phone number, and I will hope to stay in touch with you, Gary. Good luck to you.
absolutely.
Ms. Garcia?
I don't have your phone number,
You can get it from Joe.
but I don't like change, so this is going to be very hard for me. My anecdote is not nearly as great as what was on the video, but my introduction to Gary, he'd always been a name that I had heard, Gary Chester, and this as a parent, as a member of the community. And it was very early in my 10 years as a board member that Gary came into a closed session and played a video where an active shooter came into a board meeting, and Gary was telling us if that ever happens, what to do. And I was very panicky. And he just kind of was like, I got you. Don't worry. And like, from then on, and I'm sorry to put you in the role, but you've been the protector. You've kind of been the white knight. He walks me out to my car at the end of every meeting, and you've just been a calm and safe presence. And so I am sure that Mr. Rowling will be the same, but you will always have a very, very special place in my heart, and I hope to see you again and again in the future. And I wish you the best. I mean, you deserve it, but I hate that you're going.
Ms. McNicholas?
Yeah, so the first time that I met you, Mr. Chester, you were working on a project to hopefully get more truant students back into school. And I was terrified that this was an intervention for me, because if anyone looks into my record at this school, I was not the most perfect. I did not have the most perfect attendance. But despite that, I quickly grew to respect you and like you, and I don't know how many students can say that about their district safety officer. So just thank you so much for your time here, and I've really appreciated knowing you and being a student under your care.
Any other board members? Dr. Scarpino?
Chief, this started, Mr. Stevens touched upon it. It actually started during the EPERT process. And remember that, Susan? We did the EPERT process, and there was an occasion, Mrs. Miller and I had a conversation about juvenile justice, and then we started talking about the security of the district. And I remember the interview, and I remember one of the things that we talked about was you have a blank piece of paper, and you can do whatever you want to this district.
I remember that conversation.
Remember that?
It was yesterday.
Yeah. And I tell you, Chief, I respect you so much. I look forward to seeing you at your home, going on the boat. Donna, I'm going to be going on the boat. Yeah, I'm going to be going on the boat. So, Chief, I love you. Good job.
Thank you.
Any other, Mr. Fiorentino?
Yes. So I was thinking of how do I put 5 words down that describe Gary. I often do that when someone's leaving us because your mind goes in a bunch of directions, and some of these were used in Mr. Hyde's description and others. But the 5 that I came up with, and it was very difficult, I'll read them. Respectful, honorable, professional, high integrity, humble, and I'm going to put a 6th in because caring. So I broke my rule and I went to 6. And the reason I went to 6 is because the caring one, and Gary, I'll take you back about 7 years ago as a new board member. We were in the throes of going to Springfield, and many of us were down there working really hard on behalf of the district. And Gary did something for me personally that some of you know about. But by caring, after I went through really a pretty horrific evening one night from a probably disgruntled somebody, he not only showed care for me, but he showed care for my family, and we felt protected. And more than that, more than the personal situation, I think we, as board members at the time, as well as staff, felt secure knowing that Gary was trying to figure it out with local police departments to understand who and what occurred, and that it would not occur again to a fellow board member or a staff member or, God forbid, a student that had gone down to Springfield. So I just want to thank you for that. You know, it's hard to believe it's that many years ago. There's no doubt that we as a district staff, board members, and students are a safer and more secure place because of Gary Chester. So thank you for everything you've done.
Mrs. Kopes? She's going to cry.
I always do.
We got one more meeting. That's why I didn't want to cry, by the way.
Well, if you don't cry, I'm going to, so.
I have to say, in all sincerity, that you are one of the most respectful men that I've ever met. I am a very strong woman, and I can sometimes intimidate men with my strength or challenge their strength, but I never felt that from you. You always treated me with such graciousness and kindness. I almost felt like I was on a pedestal, but it wasn't in a demeaning way. It wasn't in a womanizer way. It was a man who respects everybody. And you saw me as no different. You see every person, whether it is a child, another man, another woman, with respect and dignity. And everything that everybody else has said is so true. And I can remember that lesson on if somebody walks in with a gun and what we're to do and how we're supposed to hide. And at that time we had like curtains. There was no protecting us. But I always felt safe if you were there. I used to be on the construction facilities meeting, and you talk about the security cameras and making sure that our entire district was secure. I enjoyed getting to know you and knowing that you were a Marine, right?
Absolutely.
And you served in Alaska. Mm-hmm. And that I got to meet your family when you were nominated in the Kane County Educator of the Year. I mean, to think what you have brought to our district. Those of us in this room and former employees know. I don't think the rest of District 300 knows. And I hope that somehow, some way, your ability to create a safe environment here will be recognized not only by us, but everybody you meet in the future. You have a very lucky family. If I remember, you have all girls, right?
I have 2 boys and 2 girls. Yeah, but my
You only
girls
talk
are
about the
very-
girls to me, so I guess because I have all girls. I think it's really neat that you have gone through your life and done all these different careers, and now that you're stepping into a new position in your life, I think you should feel honored and should feel good about what you've done for humanity. Because if every person lived their life like you have, this world would be a better place. Thanks for walking me to my car. Thanks for talking about the weather. Thanks for always wishing me luck. Thanks for always being concerned. But more importantly, thanks for treating me with respect as a woman. And I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. If you don't know, I'm having a very difficult time with this decision to leave. And
You
when-
could, right, we could help you through that decision.
I think my wife's got other plans, and she's got a long to-do list, so 9 years of a to-do list, so we will catch up with that, though.
So speaking of your wife, when we hired you, we also hired your wife, because everything that was said on the video and up here with the board, I totally concur with. I remember when you were hired. I remember every board meeting, holding the door open, walking me to and others to our cars. treating everyone with respect. I remember what the district was like before you came, and when I think of everything that you have done, I wonder how we functioned before. Because the safety changes, the training, the working with the discipline committee, working with bullying, working with the board and training us, putting together policies, the cameras, everything that we didn't have before that we got because of you, it's just amazing. But back to your wife. So we hired you and we hired her because what we didn't realize, and what she may not have realized, is the amount of time that you spend here while she's in Michigan. The commute that you do and the dedication that you have to go back there and come back here is amazing. So yeah, she might have 9 years of to-do lists for you, but at least you don't have to do them in between that commute coming here. So as much as we are thanking you for everything you've done here, please let your wife know that we thank her for supporting you so that you could be here for us. And as much as we're all thanking you for your respect and your integrity and your caring, thank you for all of that, but thank you for being you, because that's all you. Those are not things that you had to do because of the job. Those are things that you did because of you. And that is a fine example to 21,000 students, to our staff, to the police departments in our community, to everyone that you have interacted, that you may not realize how you impact and the mentoring you have just by being you. And I will admit that I am still in total denial that you will still be here on July 1st. Whether it's as an intern or opening car doors, I am in denial that you really are moving on, and you will be missed.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. And was there anyone else who wanted to?
Madam President, Mr. Williamson.
He's doing that thing he does where he's kind of lurking against the wall.
Yeah.
That's my first impression of Gary. I walk into Dundee Crown and there's this well-dressed man for Dundee Crown standing there kind of, like, who is this guy? A week later I realized it was there to check on Miss McNicholas and her attendance issue. What was it, Fridays you didn't show up? Okay, anyway, I'll leave that where it is. So you didn't know that was going to happen when you got on the board, did you?
I heard there was a permanent record somewhere.
Yeah. Okay. But back to Gary. So here's something, two things people don't know about Gary. Gary once, but back before I was in this position, Gary, we had a series of events at Crown where because it was a more, let's call it a more tumultuous time between us and Advent. And there was a series of events where staff and students were speaking, and a couple of us teachers were walking around that group, making sure that, you know, kids who weren't really that invested didn't just walk off and disappear. And we're taking that very seriously because, if kids are going to do this kind of event, we want to make sure other kids don't turn it into something else. And Gary came up, and I'm kind of sitting there like, oh, crap, here's the district guy. What's he going to say? He came up and thanked me for helping run a successful student event. Okay, so that was sort of a weird place to be in. Thanks, by the way. That meant a lot. And then the second one was, and I should back up and say this, I've staked my reputation in my job as lead president on closing the divide that existed between teachers and administrators in this district that actually brought me into this office. And I'm not sure if everybody's aware. I know some people are aware, but I don't know if everybody's aware that started with a step that Gary Chester made. Not that I made, but a step that Gary Chester made, a literal step. At the time of the strike, which is still the most terrifying day of my life, there were lines painted on the ground that were the no cross line because it was district property, and we couldn't cross those lines under pain of being arrested. And Gary was standing on one side of that line, and I was standing on the other, and Gary started doing this and putting his leg across the line. And those of you who know me better than others know that I'm under the True Colors pattern thing in orange, which means that when somebody does something like that, the only thing I can do is this. So now I'm stepping across the line, and admin was at Westfield, not at CMS, which was where the old admin building was, for those of you who are too young to remember that, like Anthony. But that could have been, real trouble. And here we are in the middle of a strike, fighting like cats and dogs. And here's the district security officer, the guy who's supposed to be enforcing the law, or at least that's what I thought. I was kind of terrified of him. And he's doing this, hey, why don't we step across this line? I don't know if you know that I had to convince Channel 7 News not to air that because they filmed the two of us. And it was a lot of begging on my part to keep that from airing because I might have had a different permanent record then. But they didn't air it in the long run. And Gary Chester made that first step and look, maybe we need to reconcile. And it was very literal and it was very important. And when I went back and reported it to the executive board, a lead at the time, first off, they didn't believe me. And then later they're like, we better remember to send him like a thank you card or something because that's what we're supposed to be doing. Why are we all doing this? So it was a big deal thing. After that, my feelings about Gary Chester, my personal feelings, Lee loves Gary Chester because he makes us safe. Mike kind of feels more Donna-like about Gary Chester. That's going to be a new verb, by the way, Donna-like. It applies to a lot of things. But I feel a little bit more, I don't know about this Raptor system. I'm not sure about any security system named after a predatory bird. It's just like, really? I'm not sure about any security system where I have a 3-digit ID number. I was actually thrilled because there's a thing out there where you can just run your ID through and you don't have to talk to anybody. And I was really excited, but it needs a 5-digit ID number. Fail. I got one of those 3-digit ones because I'm old. I'm 40, not that old. But anyway, long and the short of it, I'm just sorry this is a little rambling. It was ad-lib because I didn't realize he was going out tonight either. I thought I had some time to plan this. But Leeds Executive Board asked me to come up and speak for those people who have made major educational change in the time we're here. And Gary, as security officer, you've done that. You've made people feel safe. You ushered us through the time when we thought the cameras were there to check on everything we were doing, to the time that we've realized that the cameras are there to, check on everything that we're doing in a good way, not a bad way, and make sure that spaces are safe. I can't tell you how many times I used those cameras to be out in the hallway to be like, I'm not looking at that person that just ran by in that awful outfit. See, you can see me. I'm looking at the camera. Okay, but you brought these things into the district and brought us to a place where, I don't know about the plate metal up there. I didn't actually know that was there until somebody said it, but the direct impact you've had on working and learning conditions here goes a lot beyond what I think you probably thought you were doing. I was hoping you'd fix the numbering system on the rooms at Dundee Crown before you left, because it's inexplainable, but there's got to be something for the new guy to do, right? Anyway, thank you. But like I said, from my own personal standpoint, I'm planning on forgetting about you as soon as you go back to Michigan. I understand that Michigan's going to be safer and Illinois is not. But again, just thank you from me. Thank you from Lead 300. Thank you from my entire membership. You've served us well in ways we didn't know we needed to be served. And I don't know what else to say about you other than thank you. And lastly, I guess just you were the person that let me into the building when I had to come to a meeting in this building and nobody would let me in. You were always friendly. We always joked around. I always used to try to rile you to see if it was possible. I don't think it is. If anybody has stories of that, I'd love to hear them later. But thank you for the way you've done that. I agree with what Steve said. You were caring. I agree with what Mr. Hyde said. You spend all that time glad handling at the end, but it's nice that here we go. And I hope your next adventure is at least as interesting as the D300 adventure. Before you leave the district, for sure, I'm going to paint a line outside, and I want to reenact that so that Anthony can film it for posterity. Thank you, Gary. Thank you for everything.
Anyone else before we let Mr. Chester speak?
If we don't cut this short, Donna's going to have a fit. No. I just wish all of you could walk in my shoes for one day of employment in District 300. I mean, every building I go into, even central office that I come into every day, I'm treated with respect and I'm treated with friendship and in all the schools I visit, it doesn't fail. Every school I go into, somebody thanks me for what I do in those schools. That fills the human bucket, and that's why it's so hard to leave. And when you talk about family, and I know it's a cliche, but District 300 has been my family, and it's been really my honor to be here. And I do appreciate all the kind words. So thank you very, very much. It's been a great ride, and it's been a good friendship. And I thank all of you for touching my life and allowing me to be in your life, and the years we've spent together will always be remembered. And this job I have is the best job ever, and I think Todd will find that out. I think he's getting tired of hearing about how many big shoes he's got to fill and all the adventures that. But I think Todd probably knows more than anybody about how close I am to the staff, and it's this decision to go is very difficult. You know, I do have my family back in Michigan, and I thank you for recognizing that my wife has allowed me to be here for 9 years. I don't know if she's allowed me or she's thrown me out for 9 years.
She supported you.
Okay, we'll go with that. But Mr. Hyde has promised me that if things don't work out and the wife throws me out, so I don't live under a bridge, that he will provide some employment here somewhere, and so I'm going to hold him to that. But I want to thank all of you for the kind words. It truly is the best job ever, and it's the best job ever because of all of you. So thank you very much. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. You weren't true again. You can go back and check tomorrow. Yeah. Doing my job, watch your stuff.
I don't remember. Anthony, do you want to get the board in front?
Do you want to take the group photo now, or?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to give everybody some time to dry their eyes. There? Oh, some of us go to the front.
Are we going in front? Oh.
Yeah, I think it's probably best.
I'm so glad I wore my shoes.
Sorry, the board meeting's been delayed.
Well served.
And did you guys want to hold Gary for It can come work for you. Taking pictures. Fire deals all the time.
I'm here to talk about Rosebrook. All right.
Oh, they have good wine up there.
They do. Okay, so moving on. Moving on to superintendent report, Mr. Hyde.
Yes, ma'am. Madam President, before we officially transition, I will tell you that up until this day, I have always looked forward to retirement, and now I am terrified of the potential video that will be shown at my retirement announcement, although Donna Bortson will hopefully have gone long before. Board members, members of the community, it's my pleasure to begin tonight's presentation on the superintendent's report. Two primary topics on here for open discussion. As you know, this is not a voting meeting, but again, more of a preliminary discussion to initiate a talking or a discussion moving forward. So the first is on community-based services to support children dealing with adverse childhood experiences, otherwise known as ACEs. And then the second one is, again, just another touch point on the anticipated discussions that we will have throughout this coming school year about school schedules, start times, and even transportation, because, again, they are directly related to each other. Starting with the first topic, community-based services to support children dealing with adverse childhood experiences. Clearly, I'm not going to click on these links and read them to you, but I did want to provide you some additional research. ACEs is an area that has truly grown, or ACEs research is an area that has truly grown over the last 3 to 5 years. There has always been an acknowledgement that poverty has a significant impact on students and student outcomes. What ACEs and the research behind it now continues to substantiate is that other factors that are either directly related to poverty or indirectly related to poverty and the circumstances and the environments that creates in a household also predispose students to behavioral and other issues that prevent their overall academic performance and successful completion. So the proposal before the board this evening is really one to talk about ACEs and to bring a program to Perry Elementary School that will help us address these issues. Just as a matter of historical perspective, over the last 2 years, we have invested at Perry Elementary School in programs that Ms. Sainsbury and her team have initiated to address initially students in 4th grade, and then we expanded it to 5th grade to ensure that there was continuity of program, because these were students who were academically struggling, but by and large required a lot of counseling, intervention, and support, because the social issues were those that were acting as true barriers to their learning and performance outcomes, and not their intellectual aptitude. So Matt Langdon, if you recall from the board's from the board meeting last year, we provided you with some explicit data about how significantly improved the outcomes were for these students. And we track typically those leading and lagging indicators, which include attendance, discipline, overall academic performance, growth, not just whether or not they're on grade level as determined by a state assessment, but also their overall growth as compared to their counterparts. And it was quite significant. The board acknowledged that along with me last year, and we added another grade level. As you know, we also use a process in our schools of instructional reviews. This is a process that is supported not only by my senior cabinet, but also all of the instructional directors, and the school team has an vested interest in participating in this, and we also partner with LEAD as well. Through that process, we identified several, or the school identified several ACEs. ACEs data is not tracked district-wide. This primarily because this is self-disclosed or self-reported data. We have a means to get at this through the proposal I'm about to present to you, but here are the ACEs that are traditionally identified through the research. You have emotional abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, neglect, low socioeconomic status or poverty, separated families or divorced families, witness to domestic violence, family illnesses, mental and or medical, an incarcerated parent, death, or substance abuse. In addition to that, there are some other factors. There are some mixed references to self-harming behaviors. Again, but sometimes the question is whether or not that's an ACE or a manifestation of ACEs in that student's impact. As you see there, the impact that these ACEs can have on a student is adversity in childhood leading to determinant of adult disease and disability. There is a strong body of research that supports that an individual who has 5 or more ACEs actually has a significant increase in their likelihood to develop cardiac issues, blood pressure related issues, diabetes, and other significant health risk factors. ACEs are very common and often co-occur, so you don't typically see one of these ACEs happening in isolation from others. I think if you look at that list again, you kind of see why you would see those in pairs or in triples or in groups. And adverse experiences lead to chronic health problems and impact cognitive development. So the need for the improved wraparound services here, and the board, as you know, it's difficult to see here, but you were provided a copy of this packet last week. The average number of ACEs per student at Perry Elementary School is 4. 92 students have 4 or more ACEs. That is the group that we are proposing that we provide targeted assistance to in this regard. Again, I uncertain as to whether or not we have truly captured all of the ACEs here for each one of these categories. Because again, this information is self-disclosed, and oftentimes it is not information that someone freely or willingly will disclose. The reason, in addition to which, it's not just that students come in and acknowledge this to staff, although that I'm sure that does happen on a regular basis. This is also because of the significant involvement of Streamwood in that school and their ability to work with students through a referral process, and then ultimately by working with the families to get shared consent or shared information with outside counseling intervention services as well. So it's this slow kind of trickle in of this type of information. But the school has identified 92 students, or approximately 20% of their school, having 4 or more ACEs and requiring some additional interventions and supports. So the proposal before the board is that we develop a school within a school model. The school within a school model is not uncommon. It is a common practice for piloted programs. It's also a practice that we currently use in many of our schools. We don't typically call it a school within a school. We basically place programs within our buildings, whether we're talking about Pathways, we're talking about LEAP, we're talking about other types of programs, dual language. Those are essentially schools within a school. This would operate as a school within a school model based on my recommendation before the board for the 2017-18 school year and the 2018-19 school year as a pilot program. Why Perry? First and foremost, again, that's where we've already pre-identified students. They also have demonstrated over the last 2 years a very successful track record at providing the appropriate interventions and supports for students on the academic side, although they clearly have a need for additional supports. This would be an extension of the current ALOP program. That's the program we've extended to them, and we also have going through CMS and through Dundee Crown. I think it makes a lot of sense to have continuity of program throughout a K-12 environment in this feeder pattern. We would work with Invo Healthcare to develop a dedicated reinforcement, engagement, and motivation team, which we're calling the DREAM team. I can tell you that the team that developed this proposal worked long and hard to come up with an acronym like that. I can assure you, because I was part of the dialogue up until about midnight one night. They would provide a comprehensive level of wraparound services, and I'll get into those in a minute. Here you see the team members would be comprised of licensed social workers, mental health counselors, behavior analysts, and substance abuse counselors. The benefit of all of these certifications for these individuals, we have confirmed they would all meet state certification criteria, and so all of their billing would be eligible for Medicaid and Medicare reimbursements. That has typically been a problem for us in the past. We continue to work on that. We've worked with Shelley to confirm all of those things and how we would get reimbursed. So the school within a school model would operate from grades 1 through 5. So there are some questions as we look at the numbers of students, 92. Arguably, we're not going to see just an even distribution across all 5 grade levels. So it very well could be a model where we have 2 fourth grade classrooms to keep numbers even lower, and we may have a combo 2-3 classroom because the numbers are significantly lower for the enrollment there, but we'll work directly with Ms. Sainsbury and her team to identify and place students in the appropriate grade levels and classroom sizes. As you see here, the model supports students and their families with 5 or more ACEs where the students have demonstrated social, emotional, physical, or academic decline or stagnation. We are not using ACEs as a predetermination for potential participation in the program. ACEs are the secondary or tier 2 identification process. We are going to use those indicators that we absolutely can track, and then we can do a deeper dive outside of this group of 92 students. The team is actively working on a rubric or an approach to how we would do early identification going back or as early as preschool, because we want to look at that feeder pattern. We want to make sure that we're addressing these issues early, because as you know, as well as everyone else, that the need to address this to help a student ensure that they're on grade level for reading and mathematics by grade 3 is an imperative. So we want to make sure that we're addressing all of these issues. Frequent behavioral referrals, frequent absenteeism. Again, this is the data the board got to see last year. Ms. Sainsbury asked her and Mr. Langdon to come out and actually do a presentation, and they provided some exquisite data about how they've worked to address and minimize these issues for students. In the proposal, there are 2 full-time licensed social workers, 2 full-time mental health counselors, 1 full-time board-certified behavioral analyst, 1 registered behavioral technician, and 1 part-time substance abuse counselor. I think it's important to note, because I don't want people leaving here tonight or people who may listen to this later or who may be watching us live, to think that we're necessarily focusing that substance abuse or some of these counseling just solely on students. I don't know that we have a large number of kindergartners who are suffering from substance abuse. That arguably can become an issue for them later. We are doing what we have never done in the past, which is starting to address adult behaviors. We can do an incredible amount of work investing in our students for 7 or 8 hours each day, and yet if we don't do something to significantly alter or better support them when they leave and go back to their home environment, we're just going to continue to see this student spiraling out of control. So we have incorporated substance abuse. There'll be some aspect of job training and supports for them for job placement. I think it's an imperative that we get at those issues as well. The team structure will serve 35 to 45 families, or the total of 75 to 125 students. Why are we proposing this model versus just hiring staff? I think there are several reasons, and I've spoken about these with Mr. Williamson. Number one, the proposal provides or has no impact on current staffing. There will be no reduction in staff there, and in fact, the ability for us to pull these students out and serve them differently will simply allow the existing staff to go even deeper with Tier 2 students. Because right now they're spending approximately 95% of their time on 5% of their students, whereas this will allow a significant shift of our school-based personnel to manage the problem differently for Perry and their students. In addition to that, I think there has to be, and I'm just going to publicly state this, that there's an acknowledgement that these individuals, because it's a pilot program, we need to closely track and monitor how they do their job. And rather than predispose ourselves or employees or even lead and administration to a situation where we may see grievances because we're not necessarily following the letter of the law in a written contract, it's easier to work with a contracted vendor to review and possibly revise or create new job descriptions and new job expectations moving forward, because it is fully our expectation that at the end of the pilot period, if successful, that we would pull these employees into our district. And that has been the conversation with Invo Healthcare, that we would hire locally so that we could ensure that we get those people to become employees of ours. But I think we need the operational flexibility so that we're not limited or hampered by some issues within the contract, because again, I don't know to the extent that home visits will become a part of this process. I don't know the extent to which working outside of traditional contractual hours because parents are involved becomes an issue. This will allow us an opportunity to do that. The third reason is, clearly if the pilot program does not work and we find that it's not giving us the benefit or the ROI that we anticipated, I also don't want to be in a position to have to RIF 8 employees. I just don't think that that's the appropriate way for us to approach that. So I think using a contract term basis, when you look at the salaries that were proposed and the costs, it's very equitable to what we currently would pay for those services, especially since we end up contracting most of those. But I think that this puts us in the best position to create a beneficial opportunity for our staff, our students, and more importantly for our families. The Dream Team Impact, I provided this for you, cross-references what each one of those positions will actually help address for students. Each student will have an individual case study, and just as we do now under IDEA and for special education and other student needs, we, even for speech or other interventions that we provide, we would identify through a case study model for each individual student a prescribed level of intervention and support that's individualized for them, and all of the counseling clearly would be embedded throughout the academic day. So again, as I said, we will focus on the family counseling, substance abuse counseling where it's relevant, and linking to other community-based services. For the first time, we've been working far more aggressively because we have a lot of very well-intentioned and at this point partially funded community-based interventions, but we need better coordination. So bringing health services into this discussion, and this will be something I need to follow up with Mr. Stevens and Elgin, the Elgin-based, remind me, Mr. Stevens, of the name. There you go, Greater Elgin Family Care Center, for a discussion about how we can provide embedded health services, vision care, and other things for our students as well. So I think what we're trying to get at here is, when we look at what we've been successful at with at-risk students, classroom size alone hasn't made the impact that we anticipated it would have. Why? Because, again, when you have students coming into your classroom who are struggling with all of those potential ACEs, the ability for us to get them to focus on learning when they're more focused on survival, that's our problem. That's our barrier. And we do not necessarily at this time have the right service staff to provide those supports at the level of intensified service that these students will require. Costs, as I provided this for you, this is the overall operational cost, about $600,000 a year. Ms. Harkin did provide an updated budget. I will provide that for the board following this meeting. This presentation will also be updated and posted because our overall costs after we seek reimbursement through ALOP, which we know we can do. We can also seek reimbursement through, as I said, Medicaid, Medicare reimbursables for the submissions. But we have also, again, as I said, went back and looked at additional opportunities that we can tap into, and Ms. Harkin has updated these numbers. Our overall impact or our cost to us at this time would be approximately $200,000. I did share with the board as part of my update, the TRS penalty bill did pass both the House and Senate. It's awaiting the governor's signature. We don't anticipate that there is going to be a denial or refusal to sign that. That would arguably return $1 million a year back to our annual budget from Title I, which Title I dollars are explicitly used to fund and support these types of services interventions in our Title I settings. So at this point, we do not see or do not anticipate a negative impact. As I do with almost all initiatives, I try and bring before the board initiatives that are arguably cost neutral, and I do believe that ultimately this would be cost neutral as we continue to grow the ALOP numbers for reimbursables. The Medicare reimbursable percentages and the numbers that we're using are based on our current billing, but because this will be a much higher level of intensified service and everybody is already credentialed in the appropriate way, we do anticipate that we would actually receive more, but in fairness and transparency, we went with a number that we knew that we could use as a district average. So I'll pause there for any questions or comments.
Mr. Stevens?
Did you misspeak when you just said that the cost would be $200,000?
No, sir, because as I said, Ms. Harkin has rerun some of the numbers, so I'll have to get you the revised budget.
The shortfall of $400,000?
No, sir, it's not.
Okay, because then I'm not aware of that.
Yes, sir.
And I apologize ahead of time for not following up, but I had sent you an email when you were on vacation, and I did not get a response that I saw anyhow.
You did not, and Ms. Harkin was kind enough to forward that to me late this afternoon as well.
Okay,
so I apologize. So if please feel free to ask the question here in an open forum, or you.
I just have to say, this is the kind of program I love. I want to embrace it, but where do we draw the line? When you start including parents, which I think has to happen in order to make any change, where do you draw the line on where our responsibility stops? Because I'd like to save the world, but should we be doing that with school funding? I don't know, and I'm very suspicious of Medicaid funding or categorical reimbursement. I'm not sure you're ever going to get that, and what happens when we cannot afford it? Then what happens to this program? Because I have no doubt it'll probably be successful, but I'm troubled because I would like to do all of it, but I'm not sure where we appropriately draw the line. And you're kind of the kind of guy that likes to do all of it too. How do we reconcile that?
Yeah, so there's a couple questions in there. So let me address the first one, which I think is the funding. So the ALOP funding, we can provide assurances on because that's how we've been reimbursed through the ROE currently for our existing ALOP. So we can, these again are based on presumed numbers at this time. The numbers may actually be much higher. The Medicaid and Medicare reimbursables, again, based on what we've been able to successfully recapture, knowing that we have missed opportunities and we have addressed those previously. With the new money coming in from TRS, and I do anticipate those dollars, I do look at, and I'd be lying to you if I didn't say I don't want to save every kid. I would. That's my job. And I'd be honest with you, after so many years in school transformation and school reform, to be able to finally feel like we're getting at the root cause that's preventing kids from learning. Because in essence, what we've been doing for so many years with the best and the most well-intentioned teachers, highly skilled staff, these people pour their hearts and souls into these kids every day in these settings. But I will tell you, for the first time, I truly believe that this program will get at it, because what we've been doing for so many years is talking louder to people who can't hear. We haven't figured out a different way to communicate and get at the issue. I think this is the way to do it. So to the question, where's the line? I don't know. And I don't know that I'd be an effective superintendent or educator if I could define a line. And I think that's where you respectfully as a board have to hold me accountable for these types of things, because I'll invest every dollar that I think we can to save every kid. I will. And my hope is that we can prove that this model works finally and stop. We can redirect some funding. And Mr. Stevens, to your question, I know Mr. Fiorentino had a concern as well. He expressed through email about funding. If it means that I have to go back to some things that we're currently doing and reallocate or redistribute funds, because that's what we have to do to show the cost neutrality of this to make it happen, then I will forfeit some things, and I think other departments would be willing to do the same.
Can you tell me what kind of reporting back we'll get and how often on the success or failure of this program?
Yeah, so initially talking, and I apologize for being somewhat emotional, but this is school reform and transformation, and making kids successful is very, very near and dear to my heart. So the reporting would be, again, those leading and lagging indicators, the frequency of which I could provide that monthly at a board meeting. How are these students doing? What was their previous, let's just use attendance and truancy. What was their previous attendance and truancy? How are they doing now? How are they doing? We use iReady on a regular basis. We also have other embedded assessments that we can use to track and monitor their performance, and obviously compare it against their role like peer group. We absolutely have the means to provide that through Patty Schmidt. And so the frequency in which you'd like to see it, I think we can determine. We can have that discussion. I propose we do it at least monthly, with at least a quarterly significant report out to you. We would track and monitor the reduction in overall disciplinary incidents, especially those that are volatile or harmful to themselves or to others. We would look at parent engagement. We could track and monitor the number of volunteer hours that parents are making or committing to at the school level, because they want to become part of the solution. I think there's any number of ways we have a lot of data that we can report out on. I think it's the frequency that I'd like to get some feedback from the board on. I would propose monthly with a significant quarterly update and summary would be my suggestion.
Well, you're not alone in wanting to do everything.
I know I'm
you
not.
can. I absolutely agree, but I also feel that responsibility to ask questions like that. But I would like to also make part of the program then that we put some type of a benchmark of what success is.
Absolutely.
And once we have that, if we meet it or exceed it, say 1 year, 2 years running, then I would like to have a very concerted effort to go national with that program about what we did and how we did it. Because I watch 60 Minutes a lot, and it hasn't happened recently, but there's been a couple of schools in Harlem that have done really unique things, and other schools that I've heard that have done really unique things, and I want to do stuff like that. But I just want to make sure we can afford it, and I don't want to cut art or music or anything else out of the elementary schools. I want to find a way to do it all. And
Absolutely.
If there's a backlash for us stepping over the line, I want to be able to have the information to defend it.
Absolutely. And please know that I absolutely value and respect the question. It's the question that has to be asked. It's the question that everybody thinks about. At times are concerned about asking openly and publicly, so I'm glad we had this discussion out in the open. We will definitely go back and look at some things and determine we may have we may have the ability to find some additional funding within the existing budget, and we'll bring that proposal back to you. But I would like to send you the updated budget. Susan, if you'd feel comfortable, if you'd email that to the board and just copy me so that we have that as well. So please understand, Mr. Stevens, by no means, do I question. This board has been incredibly supportive over 3 years. We have done some pretty amazing things between full-day kindergarten, launching one-to-one, resource allocation as far as new instructional materials and textbooks, interventionists in all of our buildings. We have truly invested and committed ourselves. I think that for this group of students, this is just the right thing to do, and I thank you for joining me in acknowledging that.
I would just like to say, and maybe Dr. Ramstad will know the answer to this, but several years back, maybe more than several years, when the board occasionally met at CMS on the stage and those god-awful lights that used to hit us, there was an African-American boy that came before us to be acknowledged. If I'm not mistaken, he couldn't read, and all of a sudden he was an excellent reader, and he was probably 12 years old, something like that, and gave a talk about what the teachers and the staff at that school, and you were a principal at that time, meant to him, and how it changed his entire life. And I will, obviously I've forgotten some of the details, but I'll never forget the incident. I can still see the little boy's face in my mind, and that's the kind of thing I like to be able to do, but I want to be able to do it for a broader audience. I don't know how we reach that child versus other children, but this seems to be able to pick up more of them.
And for transparency, I think that's part of the discussion as well, is should this pilot program work, we do need to have a different conversation then about how do we either funnel more children into this program, or how do we expand this program in a meaningful way so that the service level doesn't get watered down to the point that it doesn't have the impact that it should. Right. So I think that's a much bigger conversation for us moving forward as well.
Because we know these kids are in all schools.
Correct. Absolutely.
Ms. Garcia?
So that kind of speaks to my point. I think my record stands that I'm pretty supportive of pilot programs and trying things, and I've been called a radical liberal by certain members of the community who have chosen to come here and air their their views that I don't necessarily agree with. However, I'm challenged by this. I like to use analogies, and I think of this as like a new medicine. And we have this test group, and some of them are going to get the real medicine, and some of them aren't going to get anything. They're going to get the placebo. And to apply that to the school district, I think, okay, great. I understand there has to be a beginning. There's always the first day. I understand there has to be the start of the program. I understand we have to try it. We have to see if it can work. But I'm thinking ahead. And I'm thinking ahead, let's say it's this raging success. I mean, we've had the success with the credit recovery programs, and I mean, we all are like, how do we get it in the rest of the schools? I envision in some ways people lining up to move into the community where this program is available to get their kids in this kind of a program, and nightmare scenarios and with the success, right? Because there's for some reason with this program I keep thinking about, okay, so in 2 years we want to expand it. How do we fairly and equitably get this to all the kids who need it? And that's going to be kids in Gilbert's. It's going to be kids in Carpentersville. It's going to be kids in each of our schools. We can't do $400,000 a school or $200,000 a school. At least I don't think we can. I would ask Joe if we could, but that's where I get twitchy about it, and I find it hard to support, and it's almost like I don't know how we can give some kids the right drug and other kids just the placebo.
And I think that there's some people who would make the argument that we're doing that now. I think there's some people who would make an argument, well, you only focus on the top 30%. You don't do anything for the middle. You focus on the bottom 30%. You focus on the top 30%, and nobody ever does anything for the kid in the middle. I think to your concern, though, if the program is successful, this is one where I do not believe that we could or should try and implement this in every school. I think what we would do is what we do now with some of our special education and other type programs, whether it's a pathway program or others, is that we look at satellite campuses or even the possibility of Perry becoming the campus for a centralized program, that it become a center-based program, and we would transport students to the program based upon A, their identification, and B, their parents' willingness to participate, because that's also something we have to acknowledge. You are absolutely right, as you and Mr. Stevens have both pointed out. These students exist everywhere else. I just don't want to take another year to let these 92 kids, plus whatever other students we identify, continue to fall further behind, because I was reluctant to bring this before the board and push for this initiative. I think you said it right. We've got to start somewhere. If it's successful, it's a much broader conversation for us to have. Okay, what are we going to do next? Do we want to make it a center school-based program and bus students there based on application and identification like we do for other programs? Or are we going to have to figure out a way to create a mirror program on the west side of the district so that we do have opportunities for everyone? And I think we have 2 years to figure that part out if the data is there to support it.
Well, I have this thought running through the back of my head, and someone said, we're not in the business of we're in the business of educating our students. We're not in the business of feeding them. When I had questions about school nutritional programs and is this the best that we can be giving our kids? I think there's a lot of components, and I just want to make sure. Probably weird coming from me, but I just want to make sure that financially, it's that this help can be equitably distributed among all of the kids in our district. That is of paramount importance to me, as I think it probably is to everyone sitting up here. And I need to maybe hear or see that that's possible. Let's best case, Fred, you got a great track record. Let's say this is as successful as everything else. We're going to be called upon then to expand. We're going to be called. I'd like to hear that there's some forethought to that.
Absolutely, we can do that.
Dr. Scarpino.
Thank you, Mr. Hyde. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate seeing Ms. Sansbury in the audience also, principal over at Perry. This reminds me of something that happened 32 years ago when I was in Texas. We actually started a program similar to this. And I appreciate seeing that now. I have a couple of questions. I feel like we're on the Senate committee right now asking questions to you, but
I have no affiliation with the Russians.
Okay,
Nor have I had any meetings with any.
That hotel. What about that hotel?
No, sir.
Yeah.
So fund a program. That's a
So
different-
here's a couple questions, and I just need clarification.
Yes, sir.
Just to help me. And can you tell me what it means to be a Title I school?
So the federal government establishes a threshold of 45% of families within a campus being eligible for federally free or reduced lunches. That threshold for eligibility for reduced lunch or free lunch does change each year. They typically bump that number. And it's based on the annual income that a family has and a number of residents within a household. As a district, as both the SEA and the LEA, the local education agents, and the SEA, the state education agents, the federal government does provide latitude to expand upon those numbers. So as a district, we have always embraced 75%. So Perry and Title I schools like it either have 75% of their families qualify or above. That's what it is to be determined as a Title I school. It's not based on language. It's not based on any other factors other than that qualifier of being eligible for free or reduced lunch.
Do the Title I schools, children, because a school is a building, do the children receive additional support services?
They do. So as you know, through your previous experience, and the board is aware, we do receive federal program dollars, Title I dollars, that we do reallocate to those schools because there's an acknowledgement that they require a different level of support and services. So yes, they do. Their staffing is slightly different. Their supports are slightly different. As I shared before, one of the examples of that would be the fact that we have Streamwood Behavioral working out of the building hand in hand with our staff and with our students throughout the day, rather than just a referral service after school.
Okay. You might have answered my next question, but my next question was, what type of additional support services do Title I's children receive?
Perry and a few of our title schools, because of their status on the state's list, receive fully released coaches, instructional coaches to work and support staff. They also receive some different types of funding to support their RTI and PBIS systems. They received different allocations of interventionists because the level of students who qualify as Tier 3 students who are unresponsive to just basic core classroom instruction is significantly higher. They typically have a better teacher-student staff ratio. And while there's always some semblance or concern about, equity, I think there has to be an acknowledgement that teaching 25 students who don't have this level of need or concern is very different than volunteering to be in a Title I setting and working with 15 students who, the ability to differentiate is significantly different. Plus the emotional burden that staff have. So we also invest in counseling. We have after-school programs as well in these campuses where we focus not only on an extension of interventions and tutoring and homework assistance, but also on enrichment opportunities through the arts and athletics. So yes, there is a significant investment of additional things within those buildings.
So with these additional things in the buildings, these programs, what's the rationale? Why there?
Demonstration of need. And again, every Title I school doesn't get the exact same allocation it's based on their enrollment, but it's also based on need. So you can have two schools that have 90% free and reduced lunch, and yet their students' needs could be vastly disparate. And so we do approach it a little bit differently. That's part of the instructional review process and some of the other formulaic approaches that we have at our schools. So,
in addition to the services that currently exist at Perry, do you see the community-based services proposed as another tool that can better assist and support the children and families at Perry?
Yeah, I think there's just an acknowledgement that they have to be serviced differently. That currently, the problem that we have is the current level of support that we're able to put into the school and the number of service minutes, when you think about how vastly different each student's needs can be, we do not have the ability to do that. And it's very difficult to find certain certified staff to have the right criteria and training. And we end up contracting out a lot of services. Speech therapy is a great example of an instance where we run into that. This is an opportunity for us, I think, to go much deeper with an intensified level of service, just like we would with a student who ends up going from a mainstream classroom into a self-contained classroom. And by no means am I labeling these students as special education or students with exceptionalities. I just think that their social emotional needs are so vastly different and unique that we need a different means to address that than we currently can support.
You might have addressed this or answered it. How will the success of the improvement be measured?
I think it's just comparing them to their role-alike group. So again, comparing them to their peer group at Perry, because again, please understand, there will be, and a little bit of personal disclosure, I may or may not have 3 or more ACEs, and yet I've been successful. So ACEs alone are not a predeterminer for failure or lack of performance or success. Sometimes it's inherent or it's determined based on the timeline in which those things happen in someone's lifetime. So as adults, we're in a better position to address most times we're in a better position to address those issues. Whereas in a childhood setting or an early childhood setting, they may not have the skill set to recognize that something's wrong and it later impacts them. So I want to get back to your question. I apologize, I got a little off track there. But I think let me ask you to restate the question, so I want to make sure I get very specific to the response.
How will the success of the improvement be measured?
So once again, comparing them to their role-alike group within the same academic setting or across the other Title I schools, I think we'll have a very good means to track and monitor their performance overall.
Okay. I had lunch with Ms. Sansbury the other day, and just to get her take on the program, to see what she thought about it. And I was extremely impressed, Kristen, with your passion and her dedication for closing the achievement gap. So I believe this is to help close the achievement gap, and for doing whatever she can to provide the tools necessary for the children and the families of Perry to be successful. I totally support this initiative. This is something that I have hoped for over 40 years in this business. This is what the children need today. So I applaud you to have the foresight. I totally support this. This is very, very good. And thank you for doing that. I
and it's testimony to Ms. Sainsbury, who's been in my ear for the past 18 months about this.
Mr. Fiorentino?
Yeah, I read the presentation a couple of times, and I love what we're talking about tonight. The presentation was one thing, and I was hoping we'd have this type of robust, interested conversation. Because we are here to make a difference. We all are, and what we're going to be able to do here for these 92 students thereabouts is make a difference in a group that we haven't been able to do that before. So I applaud you and the team for thinking way outside of the proverbial box here. A couple things for me that I need, and they're along the lines of a couple other board members, I think, in relative to, I believe this will work because I believe in you and I believe in the team and I believe you've identified something. Okay? So when you look at what you've put together here with that dollar amount, I'm just going to make the assumption that we're moving ahead and we're saying it's going to work. So feeling that way, 2 years goes awful fast, right? And so what I would like to suggest would be that we just put it out there that we're going to make this work, and you're going to find it, and we're going to approve this. But what does that next phase look like, right? Because that's what I need to thinking of it also as a business, because to me, you still have a $600,000 price tag. We don't know if that. I don't think we know if that $200,000 will come in every year. Okay, so for that next 92, maybe it's not $600,000. It's somewhere under that. But what is it, and what does it look like? I think I'm hearing you describe something as we're just talking here. What your model would look like, and that would be that this would be sort of a magnet situation, that we would bring this student population to a place, bring them in, transport them in, and this would be the experts in that area. If that is the model, then I'd like to see you do is cost that out going forward in that way and say, here's what it would look like for X amount of schools funneling in another 100 students. Because I believe, and a couple other board members have mentioned this, I believe that we're going to, as soon as this starts working, we're going to say we want it and we want it faster. So be prepared to do it faster. And it's not only a financial piece, it's all the other things. One question I do have, your ratios. I don't know. So three social workers, was it 2 social workers and 2 counselors? 2 social workers for 90 students. Where does that stand as far as a percentage with a different population? Is that twice as much, 10 times as much?
Oh, goodness. The overall ratios, that's significantly reduced over what we currently have.
Right.
And I think that's also part of this discussion. I mean, the board, as board members, you're raising some very valid points. And I think that over time, if we find that this is the real issue, and this is that addressing these issues in this manner does ultimately have I'm not going to keep using the significant word, but has a tremendous impact on outcomes, then we don't have to have a center model. Maybe the response is we revisit the manner in which we formulaically approach staffing at schools in these positions.
Right.
I don't know. I think this is the opportunity for us, especially in the first semester, to refine the identification and potential placement rubric, because now we're working with these students to determine what's working, what's not. We'll be able to use really this first year, and this is very much to your point. How do we prepare for the next phase? I think we need to really focus on year one. How many service minutes are we having to provide for students based on specific need? Not just generally, why does Fred get 300 minutes versus Mr. Fiorentino getting 200 minutes? I think we have to link that to issues of causation and outcomes. And I think over time, we'll be able to basically chart that and make a determination when we have a student who's struggling with this, this, and this is their need. Here's the estimation of how we're going to get at that. So I think this year one in particular is our ability to collect and analyze that data with you and with the team and with the school, with LEAD and with everyone else to say, okay, where are we taking this? Is it a center school model, or is it something that we just need to address differently through our staffing model? I don't know.
Right.
But I absolutely agree that if it's successful, we're going to have more people clamoring for it and needing it than we currently do.
Right. Okay. Just one general comment on your chart relative to the percentages. When you offer a percentage of separated and divorced parents of upwards of 70%, if you just look at the national numbers at that group, you would know that some of those are underreported. There's just no doubt.
Absolutely.
Right. So you know that you'll be dealing with more of some of those categories once you get in and truly work with those healthcare professionals.
And there is a screener. One thing that I think will also bring the board some comfort with this is that Invo Healthcare has committed to staffing on their side a research analyst, and they're working with several colleges because they have an interest. If this is successful, obviously they have a program model that they'd like to replicate and market elsewhere. We end up with benefiting from the research and a justification, and we just embed this as part of our staffing and our proposal moving forward. So there's a little altruistic type or mutualism approach to this as well. So it'll be interesting to see what they're able to track and report.
Well done.
Mrs. Kopiaz?
First, let me say thank you, Dr. Scarpino, for talking about 36 years ago, because now my 20 years ago doesn't feel so bad. I was so excited when I read this, being a former teacher, and I'll just share an experience from 20 years ago where I went 3 years in a row and taking fourth grade students to an outdoor education experience for 3 days. And seeing those kids in the classroom and then seeing them in 3 days where they got 3 square meals a day. They got a wonderful sleeping arrangement with no stress, no fighting, no alcohol, nothing going on in the environment. Those children were different students. Always the eternal optimist. My thinking is, if it is like Mr. Stevens and Ms. Garcia said, if this is a landmark situation and people take notice, maybe they'll flock to us and donate all their money. I mean, we can't ignore these students. I know this is what they need. So that's just my 2 cents worth. Do it fast.
Thank you.
Okay. Excuse me. What I heard from the board, so that we can make sure that we're on the same page as far as giving you direction and not coming from any individual board member. I'm going to toss out to the board. This is what I heard as far as giving you direction. I heard 3 things. 1 was to get the updated budget. 2 was to do ongoing reporting of the data, and if there's an analysis that can go with the data, you would give that to us. But an ongoing reporting back to the Board of Data. And then the 3rd thing, and I'm going to call it phase 2, is to put together a phase 2 based on how that data is coming back and what you think the projection would be, whether it's a centered school, whether it's east side, west side, north side, south side, but whatever, to come back with the presumption that this would be a successful program. What do we do? Because right now it's a pilot program. What do we do once the pilot program is over? How do we make it permanent? So I'm calling that phase 2.
Yes, ma'am.
So I'm looking here at board members to see if we have a consensus and how I recapped what was done, so we know that it's not just one person saying do this and whatever. So does that sound like?
I'd also like some confirmation that the funding, the numbers are.
I think
that's very disrespectful to Ms. Hargan, who has won awards for her skills. She sent the new one. I think everybody should be in receipt of it by now. It's a mad jump. I mean, it's a crazy jump in numbers, and I presume that it's all correct. And I just want to make sure that the funding is there. I don't.
So some narrative to go along with the updated budget.
Mm-hmm. I'll go one step further. I'd also like, and I don't mean to put him on the spot. I try very hard not to do this in meetings, but I'd also like to engage Mr. Williamson, because I think this is either a unique opportunity for another collaborative council or another working group for us just within Perry and maybe some of the other title schools to make that determination about, as the data starts to come in, what does this look like expansion-wise. So, Mike, Mr. Williamson, if you're willing, I think that's a conversation for you and I to have moving forward as well.
Well, I would.
Sure. I'm sorry, Madam President, is that?
That's fine, because what I would be saying is that developing phase 2, you're going to tap into whatever staff and individual knowledge to come up with that proposal to us.
Yes, ma'am.
And I just wanted to add, there's a whole piece of training model that's coming out of the Illinois Education Association around ACES training and all that. And next you have people sitting back in the row with me that came to hear this presentation because they went from other buildings to a training about ACES, and people from Lake in the Hills and Meadowdale in specific that are working on addressing issues in those buildings for the year going forward. So we're already, trying to initiate some other pieces with this as we work to, and we haven't even had a chance to present that to Mr. Hyde yet because we're still finishing our work on it. So I think there is a concerted effort going on. Having that said, I absolutely agree that a phase 2 part, and we've already started the initial conversation about that. I'm excited about the people that start the pilot eventually becoming members of our bargaining unit, so we can go forward and offer this to every student in the district in whatever way that actually comes up. Obviously, it's got to be cost effective. Obviously, it's got to be sustainable. But I would just say, now that Mr. Hyde asked about it, I think that Lead 300 would be a full partner in this as we move forward, including in, we've actually already written a grant to bring in, and I don't know if we'll get it or not, but we wrote a grant for $5,000 to bring materials into Lake in the Hills and Meadowdale for next year, and we'll find out later in the summer if we've gotten that.
Thank you. So is that the direction of the majority of the board? And then for our new board members, my understanding is this will be voted on at our next meeting. So we have 2 types of meetings. We have a board work session meeting, and then we have a business meeting. And there's 2 weeks in between. So if anyone comes up with additional questions, they can be addressed between now and then this will be up for a vote at our next board meeting.
And that does not, if I may, that does not preclude additional dialogue either.
Correct, correct. We can have it then as well.
What kind of time are you going to need to get this in place? So, like, let's say we voted on the next meeting that we need more information. What's the latest that this decision could be made in order to get the? I assume the program is looking to start with this next school year. I believe that's what the dates were. What's your
drop dead date?
Yeah.
I would say no later than the middle of July. We would look to get this approved at the next meeting if I can satisfy the concerns and questions that the board has provided. There may be some that I may not be able to provide an explicit response to as far as what phase 2 looks like. I do think I can provide you with a reasonable timeline as to how we would address that and who would be involved in that discussion. I think that should satisfy at least initially some of those questions. But until we start getting some data, I really don't feel comfortable saying that that would be the model moving forward. But I definitely think that we need to make a decision no later than the middle of July. Invo Healthcare is already staffed. The benefit of these employees, most of them that they've had, is they're bilingual as well. But they need an opportunity once approved. The goal is for them to get everybody together, meet. They need to meet Ms. Sainsbury. They need to build a relationship. She needs to be able to provide them direction. Ms. Sainsbury and I need to meet, follow up two more times with the team about the specific roles and responsibilities and what because basically she will drive everything in the building. It is her building. It is still her program. These are still her students. Nothing deviates from that. So I think there's some additional dialogue that has to take place. So my goal is to work to address these issues. If the board at the next meeting, based on discussion or concerns, asks to push it to a subsequent board meeting, that's fine. I just don't think we can get past July 30th and expect to launch this on the first day of school.
Ms. McNicholas.
Yeah, I have two hopefully quick questions. So are you looking at models that are already in place in other schools, or is this kind of a new program overall?
There are no models anywhere of this program currently, not to the extent and not inclusive of the parent component.
Okay. So I guess that begs my second question, which is how long are we expecting to wait to see results from this? Because this kind of intervention is not an instantaneous result, and my hope is that we are patient enough to see the results of a program like this.
I would tell you that based on their past success and the programs they've implemented very effectively in grades 4 and 5 currently, that we should expect to see some we'll see something by semester 1, by the end of semester 1. The percentage of students demonstrating improvements, I think, at the end of the year, that's why whether it's a 1 or 2 year commitment is the discussion as well. I do think it needs time, which is why I proposed a 2 year versus a 1 year, because getting up to speed, relationships, identification of students, the fluidity of students moving in and out, because these students would still participate in the specials, but they'll do so with supports. I mean, there's a lot to this. So I would expect that by semester 1, we will have some very demonstrable data to share. That's showing progress, but at the end of the year, definitively, that's when we would see the most data. Again, based on what they're currently doing, it's very impressive. I think the board recalls that presentation last year and just jaws dropped, looking at how well those students were performing in a smaller environment with different levels of supports. So,
yeah, I just want to say that this is everything the past 15 to 20 years of research in school reform says we should be doing, and thank you for having the courage to bring it forward.
Everybody remember you said that. A year from now, this could be a very different conversation. Gary, I'll need that internship. No, I will tell you this right now, regardless of what happens, and I will say this, Ms. Sainsbury, she can drive me batty sometimes because she's constantly working. And I know that others feel that way about me, and the mind's constantly racing. There's this constant ask and a constant drive to get better and do something different and do something not just unique, but something that she is truly passionate about her kids, as are all of our Title I leaders and staff. I will tell you, at the end of the day, it won't be my drive and passion that will make this successful. It won't necessarily just be the Invo Healthcare staff and their high level of expertise. It will be the fact that her staff will not let something like this fail, and that's the important piece. They realize what this investment means for us. The political risk, the financial risks. Chris is the right leader at the right time to do this, which is why I've agreed to even invest my political capital and supports to do this as well, because I believe in her leadership, and more importantly, the teachers that she has there. I think they're truly committed to children, and that's truly commendable. And I could say that about every one of our Title I buildings, except Chris is just in a unique position where she has the data and has the highest level of need. There's, hands down, she has the highest level of need.
Is there anything that we should ask the principal to address for us? Or are we set? We're good.
Unless, she's here for moral support, and she's grinning. She's happy. Ms. Sainsbury, do you have anything you want to add?
I think Dr. Scarpino has a couple of questions for you.
Kristen, why don't you just go over what we talked about at lunch? I was impressed with the dialogue we had, and just talk about, so people will be able to hear your passion and everything. That's all.
Sure. I would just like to say thank you for this opportunity to bring this discussion forward. Mr. Hyde, thank you for engaging in conversations and doing what's best for our students. When we met at lunch, we talked about our kids. We talked about Title I kids. We talked about Perry kids. Talked about just District 300 kids. And we talked about closing the achievement gap. We talked about the level of need that exists in our local community at large in all of District 300. Specifically, I talked about the intensive needs that we do see at Perry. And in our conversation, our staff was just a group of people I mentioned quite a bit. An amazing group of educators, instructionally sound, data-driven, hearts like gold. And when we look at some of our student achievement data and the growth that we've seen in our kids, we're incredibly pleased. And we're so proud of the gains that our students are making and the achievements that we're celebrating in our kids. Because there are many. There's a lot to be proud of. And we're very fortunate of the resources that we've received to do those things. Without those resources that we currently have, I don't know that we would have been able to make those gains. What still stands in front of us is a gap that is getting larger. And when we look at the needs of our kids, the gaps that we're looking to fill are much more than the academic gaps. And the barriers that we see in front of our kids are not only heartbreaking, but in some cases, they could be labeled as insurmountable. And we discussed community models where what Mr. Hyde has presented, essentially, you're servicing the whole child rather than targeting symptoms. One might argue that lower student achievement is potentially a symptom of other things. And so with a model like this, my heart is leaping for joy, literally. I cannot tell you what it has been like to sit in this chair and listen to your discussion. I cannot tell you what it feels like to actually hear the potential of us being able to serve students at this level in District 300. I envision 2 years from now, 3 years from now, coming back and saying, this is how you serve kids. This is how you do it. And yes, and somebody mentioned that this would be a national stage. Yes, this is how we serve kids. This is how you grow kids. This is how you serve students of poverty or students in need in general. And so I really look forward to what this would bring. And I want to let you know that it is my commitment to serve in this way to the best capacity I possibly can, to be responsible with those dollars, to allocate those resources and all the things that you're providing for this opportunity potentially to the best of my ability. And I will do that. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Hyde.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Stevens.
You know, this brings up a peripheral question. A couple of years ago, Trish White-Cotton was reporting to us that she had held an adult bilingual class.
Mm-hmm.
Is that still going on, and whatever happened to that, and did we ever get any feedback on what impact that had?
That program sunsetted before I arrived, so I would not be in a position to speak to that.
I think somebody might be, though.
Well, okay. Microphone.
It's actually something that Mrs. White-Cotton and myself discussed last week, and looking at a focus on potentially offering that back in the district. It was something that was focused on for staff to be able to not only build their language skills, but with a focus on actual use and within the job. So it is something that's being considered under the Title I grant as a potential.
Do we have any information on how the people went through that?
That I can't answer. Okay. I just know that it's back under consideration of what opportunities we might be able to put together.
It's unrelated, but kind of related.
Ms. Vicente, if you would make a note, and we'll bring that back as a topic at a future board meeting. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Madam President, members of the board, moving on. You've seen this information. This is just a reminder, but I did, as I promised, want to provide you with some additional information about current schedules. You've seen this slide. We have a disproportionate number of service minutes, instructional minutes at each level. We really want to focus on conversations when we talk about school schedules and start times in the upcoming school year. We want to talk about transportation needs. Getting everybody to the same length of day gives us some unique opportunities, including the ability to move from a two-tier system, or excuse me, from a three-tier system, possibly to a two-tier busing system, which clearly would provide some additional flexibility with school start and stop times. We look at the ability to have impact of other students in schedules, elementary and middle, reduction in time across our community, our access to our other community resources, impact of staff and their families, and impact of change itself are the considerations that we're looking into. Again, I've talked to you before about why we're looking at this disproportionality of instructional support. Elementary teachers require some more time embedded in their day for data disaggregation, for conversations about RTI, more importantly to plan and to be able to do some things that they currently don't do. I also think that, and I've said this before, it doesn't seem to make much sense to have the shortest instructional day with our students who require or have the greatest amount of need to be on grade level to be successful later on. The process we're going to use is just a combination of things: surveys, town hall meetings, school site visits with staff and student groups. Also, collective bargaining units will be incorporated in this. Mr. Williamson and I are already talking about the collaboration that once the school year kicks off again, we will visit every single school building and make ourselves available to staff to have a conversation about this. What are their needs? What would they like to see happen? What does the ideal schedule look like to them? And then obviously we will engage our existing collaborative councils. Here's the timeline for you, starting in July, working all the way through April of next school year. We'll continue to keep bringing updates to the board on a regular basis, but I wanted you to get a general sense of the timeline in which we will engage our various stakeholders. I do think it's important we engage students. That's the one thing that I'm going to have to work at a little differently with our building leaders, because I don't just want to talk to student council. I don't want to just talk to one small group of students. It's going to be, how do we get not just a focus group of students, but how do we get feedback from the larger population of students? And I'm very pleased to say that next year's expansion of one-to-one at high school is going to give us the opportunity to hit every single student through surveys and videos and other opportunities. So I think that's also unique for us as well. So I just wanted to, again, provide this for you as a summary, and that's pretty much the entire portion of that presentation. Again, I would encourage the board, as always, if you have questions or concerns about that process we're going to follow, please let me know. I will provide the board with dates and times for all of these. I'll work very closely with Ms. Kopaz as part of that education work group. I believe that the board needs to have a presence at these as well, so I very much encourage that based on your respective feeder patterns that we've discussed previously. I think that's a unique opportunity for us to collaborate on this as well. I think that Mary's most recent connection to students as a recent graduate, or as the most recent graduate on the board, I should say, is also not only going to provide a unique perspective, but obviously the opportunity for her to reach out through some of her peers and see, okay, are we getting the real voice of students? Are we getting the right feedback? So I think that's an important aspect for us as well. Food pantry logo contest is item 8.3. It doesn't have a slide. The food pantry, as you know, is not a D300 sponsored program. It is not a program that we fund. We provide access to our CMS facility. We allowed them to refurbish existing space that was largely unutilized in the back of the building with the old automotive area or the loading dock. You've all seen that. But they recently ran a new logo contest, and the question I have that I'm bringing before the board at this time is, they reached out to us, Ms. Lamarca in particular reached out to us to ask a legal question or a preference question, because several of the logos incorporated a D300 logo. And so while there isn't a legal basis to deny that, because we do by default allow others to have access to our logo, my question to you is, what is the board's comfort because I know there have been concerns in the past that is there an interpretation or is there a belief that this is a D300 sponsored and fully funded program? It is not. It is funded through outside grants and donations. What is your comfort level with them allowing our logo to be used as part of this?
Ms. Garcia?
I know that the people who are involved with the food pantry take great pride in referring to it as the D300 food pantry. It was specifically targeted for our community. It wasn't just that we had space. It was to serve the people, the stakeholders and the students in our community. Barring any liability, which would be, of course, a question for our attorneys, I personally also would take great pride in having it be continue to be considered a D300, to have D300 associated with that food pantry, and certainly in the logo. I don't think that it could do us any harm if our attorneys say. That would be my opinion.
Okay.
Mr. Stevens?
Minority view, I think it's a slippery slope, and unless we sponsor it, we should not allow them to use our logo. And as you know, I'm also uncomfortable that when I write out checks, it's to D300 food pantry when it goes to a private residence. I don't think, unless we find a way to officially sponsor it, our logo should be attached to it.
Okay.
Any other board members? Can we get a legal opinion on
That was going to be
using
my
that?
response based on Ms. Garcia and your request. I was on vacation, as you know, and Ms. O'Keefe had some leave yesterday, so we'll work to provide you a response to this as well. As far as what may be our potential exposure, or how could we limit that potential exposure?
I think people in the community think we're running it. And when there's a complaint, we hear about it. We don't always hear the positives. People don't always speak out about the positives, but we need to have some parameters established. We've heard things that if we were running it ourselves, we would be doing things differently versus how it's being run now. And I'm not saying it's not being run appropriately. I'm just saying that since we don't have any oversight for it, I'm not against them using our logo, and it isn't in one of our buildings, but we really should know where that line of demarcation is. What is it that they do? What is it that we do? And the legal opinion would help.
Yeah, there's a copyright issue, but outside of that, I'll work with Ms. O'Keefe
But
to
the
provide you a
copyright
summary.
issue we can waive.
Correct.
But
I can provide you with a summary from Ms. O'Keefe and other.
yeah,
you can
and
reach
if there
out you
was
need to.
an issue using our logo, does that give someone the ability to include us in a lawsuit?
Yes, ma'am. Will do.
So, just get the legal. Okay. Anything else?
At this time, I'd like to ask Ms. Harkin to join us briefly at the podium to discuss item 8.4. It's our Moody's bond rating. We had hoped to see our bond rating improve. We have a good overall bond rating, but there was, because of the economic uncertainty in the state, we didn't see the improvement that we were necessarily hoping for. But Ms. Harkin?
We put into the board package the latest update that was provided by Moody's. And partially, when we did our last bond issuance, we didn't ask Moody's to rate us. So we actually got a free rating, which is usually pretty expensive. So that was actually good news. But part of the reason why they are going through the process is just some of the concerns about the state of Illinois. And they did start out the conversation indicating that there's downward pressure in relationship to school districts. And I stopped her at that point and said, I want you to fairly review the district's finances because the district's in better financial position than it's been in a very long time. And we've made a very concerted effort to make sure that we've maintained that and have been good stewards. And I think through that conversation, it was about an hour and a half conversation. Liz Hennessy, our financial underwriter, was on the conference call as well, too. We walked him through the district finances and through the review of information that I had shared with you previously about the Sears EDA, with the fact that we've developed very strong fund balances that will provide us some latitude should there be a downward pressure from the state, that we can respond to that, and we will use those dollars to get us through that time. Because of the fact we have a large tax base, that we were able to maintain our rating, even despite the fact that there currently is some real uncertainty in the state of Illinois. So I just thought that was really important in light of the conversation that was being provided tonight. We are very good stewards, and it would be my expectation through the Board Finance Committee, which I referenced as part of my conversation with Moody's as well too. That's a very strong process that we can refer to really make sure that we do keep the district's finances on track, and I look forward to reviewing all of that information at the next Board Finance Committee meeting. Much of what was discussed tonight on finances would have been discussed, but we did have to shift that meeting due to the TIF meeting that came up, and I'll look forward to reviewing the district budget in light of the proposal with DREAM, just to show and get that conversation at the Board Finance Committee level. But I think we've been extremely good stewards, and in light of where we're at with the current pressures from the state, the district finances remain strong, and the maintaining of our Moody's rating, I think, reflects that.
Any questions from board members? Great, thank you.
Madam President, next item, item 8.5, Jacobs High School MUMPS plan update. I provided the board with an update at the previous board meeting, both for your background and also for transparency within the community, so you know that we're actively addressing these issues. As you know, I provided you an update most recently with the addition of 3 confirmed cases since the dismissal of school. Our current number of days without a work-related incident calendar date now is set for June 25th. If we don't receive any other confirmations of suspected cases or fully identified cases at that time, we can lift all of the restrictions as far as the exclusionary practices and whatnot that we've put in place for students and others. I think things have progressed well. The team addressed this situation last week as new cases presented themselves. They did a very effective job at managing that process, communicating with me, allowed me to communicate with you. We ran a shot clinic on Friday. We were provided initially with 110 vaccines for staff who chose to get boosters or could not provide documentation that had previously been vaccinated. We completed that. We continue to track and monitor everyone else related. If there was an employee, including today, some coaches that were supposed to start some camps today, we found out that they were unable to provide documentation. We either sub them out, or we postpone or delay the program. As you know, just for community's comfort, it has nothing to do with transmission. It has nothing to do with anything. We did relocate a handful of programs, especially ESY, where we may have some students who may be medically fragile anyways. So just as an additional layer of precaution, I think it served us well. The communications went out. They were frequent. They were aggressive. And by and large, very well received within the community. Mr. Stouffer did a great job through social media managing some of the questions and concerns that came through late. And we have addressed some internal issues regarding communications and, at least making sure that everyone's notified. We had a case, for example, where something was canceled because of an illness or a conflict in schedule. And again, sometimes we don't realize that the perception from the public's view was this is MUMPS related when it was completely unrelated. So we've addressed those issues to prevent those from happening in the future. And I think that, quite honestly, we've handled and managed the situation the best we possibly could. And kudos to Sherry Schmidt, who worked throughout the weekend as well, again, tracking and monitoring and providing me with regular updates that I was able to provide you with. So I think, again, this is an issue we're seeing in this region. The total number of confirmed cases based from that I sent you, I believe, from McHenry County was 20, of which we only have a handful, or we have approximately half. And so it'll be interesting to see. Our goal is to make sure that we don't open school with a pending case or a confirmed case, so that we would have to exclude students starting on day 1 of school. So,
Dr. Scarpino?
Mr. Hyde, I appreciate your correspondence and openness with all this. I know more about MUMPS now It's amazing, and I truly appreciate it. So thank you very much.
We even had a conversation today about the measles. We don't have any measles.
please.
There's no such thing. I'm just saying there was a conversation today about measles. Madam President and members of the board, if I may, just as a courtesy to some people who are here in the audience tonight, I know we will approve the HR agenda later, but I did want to take an opportunity to at least identify and ask them to stand up. Oh, one just left. Sorry. So if Mr. Chilcutt would stand up. As you know, Mr. Chilcutt is transitioning to be the coordinator of alternative and supplemental programs. So kudos to him. David Romero is now going to be the assistant principal at Algonquin Middle School. And Tara Christoph, did she leave? No, she's coming back. Okay, Ms. Christoph will be joining us back here in a moment. She is going to be the new director of science. And so they were present tonight. Mr. Mora was kind enough to take attendance for me, so we knew who was here. So at least you get an initial opportunity to put a face with the name. So thank you for that opportunity. I apologize. I know it's not on the agenda, but it's not typically something I would do in the superintendent's report. That concludes the superintendent's reports for this evening.
Thank you. We had no one sign up for public participation. Any legislative update? Or is that's something that we're going to be discussing at our board work session?
It is, and then, as I pointed out to the board, I have a meeting scheduled with Ms. Garcia, and we'll be coming up with some proposals to bring before the board as well.
Okay. All right. I'm going to go down the list of discussion items. I will look for board members raising their hand or indicating that they want to have some discussion. Otherwise, we'll just move on. So this does not preclude discussion from at our next board meeting when we would be voting on these. All right. 11.1 and 11.1.1 board meeting minutes and closed meeting minutes. Okay. 11.2 destruction of closed session minutes. 11.3 proposed changes to board policy. I just wanted to point out, Ms. O'Keefe, on 5285, when I read the last sentence on there, I'm fine with the language. It just seemed that there was another word that needed to be rejected out. It was state and federal and whatever. Just take a look at that.
5285?
Yes. Okay. 11.4 treasurer's report. 11.5 disposal items. 11.6 donations. Well, we'll go 11.6.1 Dundee Crown donation. 11.6.2 Hampshire donation. 11.7 instructional software contract. 11.8 copier paper bid renewal. 11.9 hydraulic lift bid replacement. 11.10 CTE equipment bid. 11.11 chiller maintenance contract renewal. 11.12 depositories and investment managers resolution. 11.13 prevailing wage resolution. 11.14 non-union group salaries and benefits. Mr. Stevens.
I would only say that this is likely to be discussed at the Finance Committee meeting on the 19th, so there may be discussion at the board meeting.
Okay. 11.
Same is true with 11.
Okay, and any other comments on 11.15? Okay, then we'll look forward to getting any reports back from Finance. 11.16 Freedom of Information Act. Okay, motion to approve consent items. Second, Mr. Fiorentino.
Garcia?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
Lopez?
Aye.
Fiorentino? Aye. McNicholas?
Aye.
Scorpino?
Aye.
And Stevens? Aye. 7-0.
Okay, these are roll call action items. First one is 13.1, employee discipline case 9. I have a resolution to read. Resolution of the Board of Education of Community Unit School District 300 authorizing suspension. Whereas the Board of Education of Community Unit School District 300 has received a recommendation from the administration regarding the performance and conduct of Raul Ornelas, Jr., a DESPA employee previously discussed in closed session, and whereas this Board of Education herewith finds and determines that evidence shows that Mr. Ornelas Jr. failed to perform his job duties, failed to follow directives, and acted in an unprofessional manner. Whereas the Board of Education finds that the suspension of Mr. Ornelas Jr. is in the best interest of the district. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Education of Community Unit School District 300. 1. Mr. Ornelas Jr. is hereby suspended without pay for 3 days to take place on June 20th, 2017, June 21st, 2017, and June 22nd, 2017. Motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Fiorentino.
That was Dr. Scarpino.
Yes, aye.
Fiorentino, aye. Stevens?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
McNicholas?
Aye.
Lopez? Aye. And Garcia?
Aye.
7-0.
Okay, moving on, item 13.2, this is employee discipline case number 10. Again, I have a resolution to read. Resolution of the Board of Education of Community Unit School District 300 authorizing suspension. Whereas the Board of Education of Community Unit School District 300 has received a recommendation from the administration regarding the performance and conduct of David Lusky, a DESPA employee previously discussed in closed session, and whereas this Board of Education herewith finds and determines that evidence shows that Mr. Lusky failed to perform his job duties, failed to follow directives, and acted in an unprofessional manner. Whereas the Board of Education finds that the suspension of Mr. Lusky is in the best interests of the district. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Board of Education of Community Unit School District 300. 1. Mr. Lusky is hereby suspended without pay for 4 days to take place on June 15th, 2017, June 16th, 2017, June 19th, 2017, and June 20th, 2017. Motion to approve.
So moved.
Mr. Fiorentino?
Scarpino?
Aye.
Lopez? Aye. Fiorentino, aye. Garcia?
Aye.
McNicholas?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
And Stevens?
Aye.
7-0.
Okay, moving on. 14.1, board committee reports. Board Finance, I believe you're meeting on June 19th?
Yes.
Okay. Moving on, board.
I would just say it's also a new time for us. It usually was 5:30. We moved it now to 4 o'clock, and that'll be the regular time. But after the 19th, we hope to resume our normal schedule. This is the first Monday of the month.
Okay. For 14.1.2, Board Construction and Facility Oversight Committee. Mr. Fiorentino, anything to report?
Well, we started by welcoming Dr. Scarpino to our committee. We were glad that he was with us, and we had a pretty full meeting, as you can see by the discussion items. There was 10 projects or presentations. I will not go through those because most of them were in the agenda tonight. We are also going to a new time, same day, but we'll be starting our meetings at 5 p.m. directly following the Finance Committee. Dr. Scarpino, anything to add?
Okay. Moving on. Do we need any more discussion on the food pantry logo? Anyone? Okay. Anyone have anything else under board discussion? Mr. Stevens.
Mr. Hyde, I've got to ask, because now I'm remembering all these other things that we've done over the years. Do we still have an apartment in Foxview that we use for what I would call home ec training?
I don't think it's in Foxview.
not
I
in
think it's in Meadowdale Apartments.
Correct.
Meadowdale Apartments?
2 years ago, that was something Ms. Nacky and her team developed. There you are. So, Ms. Rowling, if you'd like to come to the podium so you can address that question.
If we still have it, how's it doing?
We still have it. It's doing well. It's been fully furnished, and students get an opportunity to go over there to demonstrate their life skills. But, Ms. Rowling, if you would.
Absolutely. So all three of our high schools utilize that, and we're also utilizing it through ESY. during the school year, anywhere, and I'm sorry, the 300 plus program. So anywhere from 4 to 5 days a week, that apartment is being used.
Great.
So they do everything from cooking, cleaning, budgeting. They utilize the Walmart, which is brand new, to do some shopping. So it's been a great experience. During the 300 plus graduation or recognition, a lot of the students put that into their speeches about how thankful they were to have that.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else?
I would just like to, I know he's kind of hiding in the back. Mr. Stauffer is here. He did an excellent job with getting the plans changed for the summer arts that is just started on this Monday from Jacobs to Dundee Crown. As I want to do when I have a child involved in something, I have to laud it because he's come home 2 days in a row now, ridiculously excited, and it sounds like the coolest thing ever. So hats off to you, Mr. Stauffer, for organizing, for planning, and executing. And they're going to have a performance. God love them. They're going to have a performance on Thursday next week after 8 days. So it's not overnight. It's not a 24-hour musical, but it'll be open to the public, and it should be a wild ride.
Cool. Now that I have two items. First one is, now that we have approved the HR report, should we have our new employees come up and be greeted by the board?
Yes, ma'am. And there are two other members. So Ms. Kristoff did return to the room, so we'd ask her to join us. And we also had Jake Stauffer in the back. As you know, he'll be transitioning to an associate principal's job over at Dundee Crown. I'm just thankful that Mr. Mora is not responsible for attendance. So if we could have those administrators please come up and be formally greeted by the board. Please come up, shake hands, and welcome aboard.
He can't function after 9. He can't.
Thank you.
I've already heard great things. I know, we're trying. Alexa.
Awesome. New position, thank you.
Yeah.
So I had one.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Ms. I just have one other reminder. We have a board work session on the 24th. I still have to figure out the time because we're all over the board on availability. I will be sending out an email on that. The other part of that is just to let you set up expectations so you know the two things that we're going to be working on is we're going to be coming to the board to discuss legislative objectives. And the other thing is board handbook that Mr. Hyde and I have been working on with Mrs. O'Keefe, and it will cover a lot of things that are already in our policy, but a lot of how we have set our culture for the board and how we, our professionalism that we do. So it will be something that with future boards, with our current board and with future boards, hopefully it will make any transition smoother because this is how we behave. And once we have that done, I'll be bringing it to a board meeting for a formal vote. And then that will bind us in I'm looking at it mainly for future transitions. We work very well, but we need to have it down in writing, and it'll cover our handbook. So those are the two topics. We're trying to streamline the meetings, so maybe an hour and a half. But we have to work out time that will be not a burden on staff and not a burden on board members. So I'll be checking with board members before that. Mrs. Kopass.
Ms. Garcia's comment reminded me of being proud of Hampshire High School, who traveled to the Washington, D.C. with the band and the chorus. And thanks to live Facebook video, they were able to broadcast their playing on the Lincoln Memorial steps. But the coolest part was that a former Hampshire High School student who's now in the United States Army band and plays at the White House was able to join them in full dress uniform and play with them on the Lincoln Memorial steps. So it was just really a great, great experience for the kids. And a proud teacher moment for Mrs. Lincoln.
Okay, anything else?
One last comment. I just want my colleagues and Mr. Hyde to know how much I enjoyed tonight's meeting with the discussion. This is what we should be doing, and I really appreciated it and liked it.
That was one of our goals that we, as a board, determined we needed to work on. Okay, motion to adjourn? Second? All in favor?